Hi, I'm your host, Anand J. Sukadia, and this is the Limitless One Podcast. Join me on this journey as I interview the most inspirational souls who are tapping into their limitless blueprint on a mental, physical, and spiritual level to thrive in uncertain times. If you feel you are so much more than just this body, just this life, and want to tap into your limitless potential, you're in the right place. Here we go, starseeds. I just returned from a life-changing experience in Egypt and had one of the most profoundly spiritual experiences of my life, staying overnight on the Giza Plateau and inside the 3 pyramids. I even got to lay inside the king's chamber, where I had many mystical breakthroughs. I was blessed to experience this with my brother and great friend, Brant Falliaux, and his girlfriend, Allyssa. In this podcast, Brant and I share our individual and collective experiences, engaging on a journey like no other. Brant is a second-time guest on the Limitless One podcast, so check out episode 50, where we go deep into Bitcoin and traditional finance. Brant Falliaux has a background in traditional finance and has set his roots in Bitcoin mining as the founder and president of Royal Haven. He is also an advocate for unity consciousness and 5D ascension. His passion is his music project called ELOVE, and his great work can be found on Spotify. His other hobbies are art, meditation, fitness, and snowboarding in his home base of Colorado. Welcome to the Limitless Podcast, brother. Brant Falliaux.
Hey.
How are you, man?
Good to be here again.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing amazing, dude. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been back from our trip, and I'm excited to have you on. You're a second-time guest, so we have some really deep spiritual stuff and travel stuff to talk about today.
Yeah, Egypt. What a wild time.
It was more impressive than I even expected. Like, you couldn't even imagine. You know, I've been studying Egypt for a really long time. Ever since I was a little kid, I was into Indiana Jones and even that show DuckTales. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I do remember
Scrooge
DuckTales.
McDuck. He would always go to these ancient sites and unlock mysteries, and that just turned the wheels in my head. And I kind of always felt that I was connected to that place, especially Egypt. And I've always wanted to go. And then this opportunity came up. And maybe you could tell them a little bit about how we found out about this particular opportunity.
Yeah, this one was funny. It was almost meant to happen. What we both found out about this trip. We were talking about it. You had applied and been accepted and done your whole video and all that type of stuff. And then I just totally spaced on it. For this trip particularly, people had to do a video telling about themselves, and there's a little bit of a background check, I guess you could say, just because of the group that was going out there. And I'd been busy and I'd been working, and I just spaced on it. And then I think you canceled your trip, or you put it on pause. We had both talked about this, and then I was up with my girlfriend at the Gaia Event Center in Boulder, watching Robert Edward Grant talk, who, if you don't know about him, you need to look into his work. He's amazing. And then the second day for lunch, Robert kind of just popped out and started talking to me, and we chatted for 30 minutes. And it was really nice because it wasn't surface level conversation. It within 2 minutes, we're getting into Arcturian starships and Pleiadians and multidimensionality and interdimensionals and metaphysics and all these things. And then Robert goes, "Well, you guys should go to Egypt." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You guys should go." And he snaps his fingers and calls his secretary Eden over, who's wonderful. And he's like, "Yeah, just talk to her and she'll get you all set up." So I'm like, "Well, I see the stars aligning here." So, and then I think I had told you, "Yeah, we met Robert. He's super awesome." Talked to him for a whole, afternoon. And then you signed back up and jumped on that. So yeah,
it was incredible. So I initially applied when we talked about it. Then I canceled. I was like, you know what? I have so many things going on with the business. Can I take off for 2 weeks? All the small-minded thinking. I was like, no, I should really do this, but I was like, oh no, it's not the right time. I'll do it next year. I'll take my girlfriend Kate, or I'll go with you guys next year, because I think you had some music festival in Costa Rica or something like that at the time. So
Yep.
I kept having dreams after I said no. And that's really weird, because a lot of times after I make a decision, I'm good with it and I feel comfortable. But I had this really weird feeling like, oh man, I should really do this. I should really do this. And then like a couple of days later, you reached out to me, said, hey, it's back on. I'm going. Your girlfriend's going. And then I started thinking to myself, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna make it happen. So I just I reached out to the executive assistant, Eden, or Robert, and made it happen. And ever since then, like I was like, okay, this is gonna be amazing. And then that was like 2 months or 3 months before the trip. So I was like, you know what, it's gonna come soon enough. I don't need to be thinking about it or anything like that. Let me just flow from my life into this trip. Whenever it happens, it's going to be amazing. And shit, man, when we went there, it blew my fucking mind. Just from the minute we started flying over the pyramids coming into Cairo. Oh my goodness, man. It was,
ironically, we're on the same flight. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, same flight. And then there was only 4 people that were on our tour. And one of the guys from Frankfurt, which was a stopover to going to Cairo, was sitting right next to me. And yeah, like only in the last 3 minutes of the flight, I'm like, oh, by the way, what are you doing in Cairo? He's like, oh, I'm going on a tour. I'm like, who's it with? And he's like, oh, some guy named Robert Edward Grant. I'm like, okay, we're all going too. So synchronicity started from from the very beginning there. And yeah, it just dovetailed into the most magical experience with the most amazing people. And yeah, maybe you could just talk a little bit about like when you got into Cairo. We were driving in. What was like the feeling that you got, just from like an emotional stance?
Man, it was overwhelming. It was, when we saw the pyramid, when we were flying over and we saw the pyramids down there, and you saw this whole city, I instantly got the feeling of like 2 separate worlds. And I think the more we went through the trip, we realized like whatever ancient Egypt was is just so different from what's going on today. And then driving through Cairo was just, it took me back. It's a massive city. Like still one of my highlights of the trip is when we were driving past that massive palace. We're like cruising, we're looking at this thing like, whoa. And you said, yeah, man, I mean, if you get a bunch of money, you got to park it in real estate. It was just hilarious, because we're looking at like probably a 200,000 square foot, like walls, like castle walls, like guarded all around. So that was hilarious. And then when we rolled up to Mina House, which is where we stayed, really nice place, and it's right next to the pyramids, and you see the pyramids for the first time, like in person, driving around, you see them. And I don't know if I could explain that feeling. But you realize something big is going on there, and something big happened there. And you can almost feel the energy of them from miles away. And you can certainly feel the energy coming out of the pyramids from the hotel, which is right there. And then, yeah, just kind of just being in awe. And then I remember like the first day that we went up, not when we went into the pyramids, but earlier when we went to go see the Sphinx, when we're kind of driving past the Great Pyramid, and you see like Emperor, you're close enough to where you could get out and go like touch the thing. And I just thought, there's no fucking way. Like the story that we're told, or the story that people are told, about that, there's no way that that's what happened there. Those things are so impressive, and they're so massive. And I'm like, those blocks, man, I don't know exactly what was going on, but there's no way people rolled those up there with like little rollies and stuff like that. There's just no way.
Yeah, the official story makes no sense. I mean, what I remember from driving it, because I remember, yeah, we were on the tour bus. We were driving. Basically, we did a circle around the pyramids, and then we went into the Sphinx area. That's all called the Giza Plateau. So the Sphinx is there, and then the pyramids are pretty much very close by. I would say maybe half a mile to, not even, right? Probably like
If that, maybe
half a
quarter
mile,
mile.
if that. Yeah. So just the sheer size and scale of everything going there, like my heart started beating like real fast. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like what I've been waiting for my whole life. So I was like, I knew that later that day we were going to be going to inside the pyramids, and then the first stop we had was the Sphinx, which is, it's crazy because like timelines don't make sense when people talk about ancient Egypt, right? Everyone thinks, oh, ancient Egypt is all of that stuff. But no, there's so many different periods. And what we found out later is that they've been finding like arrowhead spears from 4 million years ago. And they found skulls from 400,000 years ago and then 100,000 years ago that were human. So it's like, there's no such thing as ancient Egypt. Yeah, there's, if you want to look at it, everything happened in this one area. But what our tour guide was telling us after all the research he's done over the last 40 years is there's about 100,000 civilizations that were here and that were building and that were doing these things and had this technology. And what we look at as like hieroglyphs and all that kind of stuff, you know, the what they say is it's about 3,500 BC to about 310 AD, somewhere around there. Don't quote me on the numbers, but very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. And that's when they said everything was built. And that's called the dynastic period, which, you know, learning about all the stuff that we did, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. And I think too, when they look, they reverse time and they look at, you know, the Sphinx, and you go back to around 10,000 BC or so, and the Sphinx is directly pointed at constellation Leo at that time, you know, and that's the last time that occurred. I think a lot of those alignments and stuff like that, because you see when you get there, it's all lining up with stars. Like the 3 pyramids are lining up with Orion's belt, and the other pyramids are lining up with the whole constellation of Orion. And it makes sense, you know, and getting out of Egypt too, you know, other sites like Göbekli Tepe and stuff like that, where these alignments were at this time that is way before anyone says that things were even going on. Like they're trying to tell us that there's like Neanderthals running around and like cavemen, you know, and all of these sites line up with the stars perfectly, like the knowledge and the mathematics that it would require to do something like that is definitely not primitive. And to some degree, to a large degree, I think too, you saw in Egypt, it might not have been the exact technology, you know, maybe these guys didn't have like 5G towers and stuff, but it was obvious to me that there were technologies that existed when we were going around that far surpass what we have today, particularly in some of the rose granite, like those massive, you know, like 1,000-ton pieces that are carved. My girlfriend Allyssa was looking, and she found like the symmetry on the face is so perfect that it was barely like a fraction of a millimeter off. Nobody could have sculpted that.
No way. Yeah. They do like basically reverse imaging of the mirror, and both sides look the same. Even in paintings, even our human faces, if you take one side of our face and duplicate it, do the reverse reflection on the other side, you look like a different person, like 100%. Mm-hmm. There's no way to get that kind of perfect symmetry unless it was done in some kind of machine.
Like or laser cut.
Or laser cuts, yeah.
Something like that. You know, that kind of brings me back to you know, I know we're on Giza Plateau, but jumping to when we went to that quarry. And I don't know if you have pictures you can edit. Yeah,
I'll put them
in or throw something in here. But like clear, obvious machined rock. Like it looks the same as a quarry we would have today. There is no doubt in my mind that machines were being used of some sort, you know, looking like they're scooping this stuff out like an ice cream scoop. Yeah, really, really interesting. But yeah, to get back to the plateau, that first day at the Sphinx, it was nice to set the pace of the trip where we kind of realized, I think when we went to the Sphinx, because everybody else had to like stand up on this platform, you know, and they get to see the Sphinx from like over there, and you know, not because of you or I, but actually more because of Robert. You know, we get there and we walk right down the platform, like we get to go touch the thing, walk all around it, like sit in between the paws. head of antiquities shows up, and and meets Robert there, and like just realize that this is like a bit of a higher level trip. So that was really cool. And I think that did set the pace for some of the other things that happened that we were able to do. So
yeah, 100%. I think that, we were so blessed to go with Robert. I think that's another reason why I really made sure I jumped on this when the second opportunity came around, is because, after this particular trip, I don't think he was planning on doing another one for quite some time, because there was other sites and everything that he wanted to go see. But just to give everyone a background on Robert's like the guy who figured out the correlation between Leonardo da Vinci's paintings after a certain timeline in his life. After he went to Cairo, there was a letter from Da Vinci to the Sultan of Cairo at the time. And he basically invited him over. He did some research there. He spent some time there. And then all of his paintings after that period, like the Vitruvian Man and a few others, Last Supper, and I think there was one more, right? Was the face, the Dali, Salvatore Dali? I don't know. One of the other ones. They all correlate to the mysteries and the mathematics of the pyramid. So he must have had access to figure out what was actually going inside there, where the chambers were. All this ancient knowledge obviously is hidden now, but we're kind of like rediscovering it. And to be on this trip, and the things that we saw, like, in the pyramid, and they never found any hieroglyphs inside there, but we were spotting lots of different images and visuals. And, we'll talk about that now, is like going to the pyramids, to have the opportunity to spend overnight in the pyramid. I mean, you couldn't plan this kind of thing unless you knew the right people. And we were lucky to be able to spend 2 hours in all three of the pyramids. There's the Great Pyramid, which is the Khafre Pyramid. Then there's the Khufu Pyramid, which is the second biggest, and then the Menkaure Pyramid, which is the smallest of them, even though they're all freaking large. So yeah, we got to go from I think it was 5 o'clock till almost 11, 12 o'clock. We were out there overnight, and it was just our group, which was insane. And I would love to kind of go into one by one, starting with the first pyramid that we went into, the Menkaure, and kind of get your perspective, and then I'll share a little bit of mine.
Man, yeah. So let's go back to Mena House. It's like, okay, Meet out here at 5 p.m. Giza Plateau shuts down at 5 p.m. Robert has clearly just got this connection with antiquities and the government. So we all get to, when you go to Egypt, you can't just go walk up and walk into the pyramids. You can go see them, but you can't go into these things unless you set something up like that.
Or you could go, just one more thing. So yeah, you could go regular tour, regular hours, right? But you have hundreds of people in and out. It's everybody's elbow to elbow. You're not able to spend any kind of time in there. The minute you go in, you're kind of escorted right around to come out. And it's
there's kind of a loop that they have set up actually inside there to go up and in, and then get out of there. But no, you can't just go privately hang out in the King's Chamber for a couple hours because you feel like it. So Giza Plateau closes, we walk up there, there's all these guards and stuff like that. We go into Menkaure, and I think it had been either weeks or months before anybody had even been, nobody had been in there. When we went in there that night, it had been quite some time. So we go in there, and that was the smallest one on the plateau, or the smallest of the three. And right away you go in there and you feel something the pyramids vibrating, and you could totally feel that. And we went down into that chamber, and it's interesting. There's massive rose granite chambers, floor to ceiling, in both Menkaure and Khufu. But we go into Menkaure, and there's this new chamber that they had just kind of dug out, and I don't know what they found in there.
First of all, that hasn't been open to the public ever, almost. Probably thousands of years people haven't been in there because they were sealed off.
Yeah, so we go in there and we do a prayer, an activation prayer for grid work, and I don't know, in grid work, you're kind of connecting places on the earth grids and bringing these old sacred grids back online, to try and hold the higher dimensional earth, people talk about 5D earth or whatever. we activate these old grids and let the energy flow in the way that it's supposed to, instead of in an inverse manner. And it's just really good for the planet. It's really good for consciousness. It's good for where we're trying to head. So we go and we do this prayer, which was amazing, like absolutely amazing. And then when we go into the other chamber, that is, again, just like the floors, the walls, the ceilings, it's all rose granite. Rose granite vibrates, it's rose quartz and granite, so it vibrates at a particular frequency. Crystals are actually vibrating at such a high frequency that it's like higher than liquids and gases. It's so high that it collapses back, and that's why crystals appear to be solid, but that's why they have all these properties. So,
and just
right
just to kind of give you sorry, everyone, a little bit of a heads up. So they use many different materials, right? So bringing rose granite is from a really far away place, or bringing granite or, sandstone, limestone. These things were, up to like 20, 30 miles away, if not 500 miles away, down in quarries, down in Aswan. So they knew different materials, different rocks. They all had different properties and different conductivity. So how they knew that, we don't know, and what experiments they did to get that. There had to have been some kind of advanced technology that they were using to figure all this out, and then specifically putting certain granite, rose quartz in certain chambers brings certain harmonics. And that's the other thing we'll talk about, is like they're attuned, all these chambers and all these pyramids are attuned to certain musical sounds and hertz and frequencies.
Yeah, it's Robert figured out that all those pyramids, not in a foot or cubit or meter type of like measurement, but in perspective ratios to one another, which, these ratios are constants in music. Like when you play a piano, the notes are different. Like it's different than a guitar string, for instance, but those ratios in the octave are still the same of the notes between one another. So Robert kind of cracked that one based on working with 432, which the 432 tuning is a little bit like, it's more beneficial than the 440 tuning. That's a whole other conversation we can get into. But anyways, you go in there, and it instantly became aware, even before we went into the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber. When we went into that chamber in Menkare, it's a resonance chamber is what it is, and you speak in it, and the sound folds back on itself, and it folds back onto you. And I mean, you don't even have to be great. You can just do some simple like ohms, and the way the sound goes out, the whole pyramid starts vibrating back in on itself. And it's very activating, is if I had to say it in the simplest terms. It feels like an activation of sorts. So
yeah, it was super powerful. And I'm not an amazing musician like yourself. Brant's got some really great music you got to check out on Spotify, and he uses all this sacred geometry and sacred 432 hertz and everything like that. Everything he does is very conscious. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that in a little bit. But yeah, so like even for me, like I'm a terrible singer. I can't hold a note. I can't hold the key. But doing the oming or just you could feel like it coming back, the reverberations coming back towards you. And it kind of felt like every word that was spoken in there gets amplified. So we were in that one chamber that they just opened up. It was kind of small, and we had so we split this group of 75 into two groups, and there was like 30 something people in the group that we were in with Robert at the time. And there was a prayer done, and it was an impromptu prayer about what we're going through in humanity right now. And we're going through so many changes, and there's so much consciousness being raised, but at the same time, there's always going to be that balance. The more the consciousness is raised, the more there's going to be darkness, but it's all part of the same oneness, because you can't know divinity without knowing the other end of the spectrum, which is the lack of, or the absence, or the inverse of that. So we were just doing a prayer in there, and it was just so beautiful. I think everyone was like in tears at that time, and everybody was holding hands, and it was a very special moment. And at that moment, I knew, like, okay, I've been here before, and we've done this before many times, and the same group, and just the people that were in there were just like so open-hearted. And it's crazy to go into a place and have such a spiritual experience and not having met any of these people. So it was like the first night of bonding without any words, but somehow everybody, the activations, the prayers, the meditations they were doing, somehow it all meshed together to make this beautiful symphony of love and connection. And I think that really, started the trip off in a really powerful way.
Yeah, that was really special. And I did get the feeling, just like, I don't know if it was timeline compression or whatever, but you could see different strips of reality. You could almost feel them. And that prayer was great. And then everybody went, was in the next room and talking and talking about the walls and seeing things. Right when we walked in, and I looked up on the left, I was like, that's caduceus, that's DNA. But then I'm pretty sensitive to the energies, and it sat me down. Like I kind of spent some time in there, like engaging with, and then finally I just went over in the wall and just like lean against the wall and close my eyes. And I don't know where I was. I don't know where that took me. But magical to say the very least. It was really, really intense experience. I felt like I was vibrating, but then I also feel like I sort of vibrated into just complete oneness with everything, where you can kind of feel the field. And it's sort of like that veil of illusion. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm in here with all these other people that I haven't just met. It's like, I'm in here with all these other aspects of myself. Mm-hmm. And we're all remembering self, and it's like all one thing, and we're all just kind of working our way back home together, which was really cool feeling.
Yeah, beautiful. You couldn't have put it better, because I felt the exact same way. And when we went into one of the larger chambers in Menkare, we started seeing things on the walls, like, the caduceus, like you said, which is basically like, if you ever see a medical symbol, it's like the snakes kind of like going up the scepter, I guess. That's the caduceus. It's also known as not Hermes staff. Hermes staff, Hermes staff. Double helix. Yeah, there's so many different snakes, the kundalini. There's so many different symbolism for. But then we were also seeing other stuff. We were seeing tree of life, and we were seeing flower of life, and circles of life, and so many things that you would never expect to see in ancient Egypt. There was no hieroglyphs anywhere inside any of these three pyramids. So that's like really some interesting thing to keep in mind, is this could have been, and we believe that it's from a time way before hieroglyphics were even used. And what the purpose of these chambers were, maybe they were repurposed for several different reasons throughout the ages, but there was so many different uses, whether it's, energetically healing chambers, whether it's musical. Also, what I felt, I think I would say this is just in general in all three pyramids, or just everywhere we went in Egypt, is that when you go in there, it's so grandiose, it's so enormous that it's kind of overwhelming. And the first question that comes to many people's mind is, how the hell did they do this? Right. But then the more you see, the more I started to think to myself, is like, instead of asking how they did this, why don't you ask yourself, how are you capable of doing something similar, and how you're able to do the same thing? I think the message that they want to give us is that you have this divinity, you have this power within you. You could create whatever you want. And these sites were made with so much love, because they knew that they would stand the test of time and last, and people would come in and they would want to be curious about it. And every time I went into a different place, I felt like a different aspect of me was activated. And I don't even know how to describe it now, but I just feel so much lighter. And all the things, like, some limiting beliefs that I had, when we went to these chambers, we saw hieroglyphs, and we saw, like, being inside these healing chambers and the pyramids, like, I would have crazy night sweats. The first 4 nights, I think I was just releasing so much stuff. It was wild. And I'd wake up and I'd feel so good the next day. And yeah, you go through, I think a lot of times it'll bring up all of the challenges of your mind that you go through, like, your limiting beliefs, fears, all that kind of stuff. It'll bring it up so you can move through it and kind of move out of it. And I think that's what all these places wanted to show you on some level. Obviously, they had their uses in the time that they were in, but also they knew going forward, okay, how can we show the people that come here love, and how can we send them healing and show them that they are divine incarnate, So once we realize that we are that limitless energy, that God energy, then it kind of changes our life. And I think my life now is completely different, and the trajectory is so much more amazing because I don't have those limiting beliefs that I was suffering from prior, you know?
Yeah, I don't definitely, everybody in that group to some degree experienced something pretty profound there, I would say. And we were all kind of just in awe, lost in the sauce, going through it. And everybody's kind of using each other as mirrors to bounce off of, and to, what's going on with you? Like, what kind of dreams are you having? Like, what are you feeling like right now? And everybody's just kind of feeling each other out, and everybody knows something big is happening. But yeah, not just the pyramids, but all of those sites. I remember, like Hathor had a completely different frequency than the Temple of Isis, and these different places we would go to. You could go stand just in the middle of one of the temples and feel the energy and the purity of the energy that came through there. And I think one of the big things that got me was that first night we had that private visit at Hathor. And you're going in, and there's like a back room over here, and there's a back room over here, and go in, and there's flat wall of stone, and there's a gate, and then you can clearly see the hieroglyphs above it. And it's like, to us, we can't wrap our minds around this. Like, people even don't believe it. They're like, oh yeah, no, that's just it's a metaphor for something else. Nah, like, these guys were opening stargates in the walls.
It literally shows a star and it shows a gate.
Yeah, man. So realizing that, Allyssa and I both just kind of like put our hands and head just like tuned into that wall, and it's like, wow, like this space right here is depending on who knows what to do with it, totally a portal to not only other places and other temples in Egypt, but other places in the cosmos. And that feeling was visceral. That became very real to me. And just realizing how much more, we have, I think right now, humanity is drowning in technology and starving for wisdom. And back then, maybe it was a different technology, but they had the wisdom to go hand in hand with it. And you can have all the tech in the world, but if you don't build another pillar there, you don't have a house. You can't put the roof on the house. And you can tell that those people were absolutely connected to the cosmos, to themselves, to their souls, to the universe, all the things that I think we're remembering now. But I think they had it. I think it was lost, and I think it's trying to come back through now.
Yeah.
But yeah, stargates. Wow.
Those were incredible. Yeah, I have lots of pictures. I'll put some in the blog. But yeah, science and spirituality, they had a great understanding of both. And without one, you're lacking, right? So right now we're in an age where there's not a lot of spirituality in science. But if you look at the ancient Egyptians, you look at the ancient Hindus and the Vedic culture, like everything was science and spirituality together. The astrology was a science, food was a science, everything was, but it had to relate to the divinity within and to God and all this kind of stuff. So I think we're coming back to that consciousness because when you lack the spirituality in the science and the technology, then we're kind of like, not sure where to go with it. So then a lot of greed, a lot of things, start taking over when people are not grounded in the oneness of all of us, rather than, how can I get my, my dollar or whatever.
Right. I think the illusion of separation is the starting point for all the problems. Because as soon as I don't see everybody else as myself, then we can get driven into survival, and then it makes sense to serve the self. And I think what we're really experiencing is just a loss of self, and what's going to fix it is a remembrance of self, and that everyone is you and you're everyone, And it's very apparent too that even in Egypt, there was this time where things were really good, and you can see where it started to fall off. I mean, when we were going to some of those temples, whoever came in and conquered was chiseling the faces of these rulers, these deities, or, right off the walls. Like they don't want people to remember that, because then that opens up the throne for XYZ ruler to take that place and then, rule over people from top down. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting to watch. You can see that play out as you're down there.
Yeah. And one of the things that really came up is like, we're just going through these cycles of high consciousness to low consciousness, high consciousness to low consciousness. And this is just the universe, right? Expressing itself. It's the breathe in and it's the breathe out. Like they talk about the Brahma's breath, when Brahma breathed in, there was creation, and breathed out, there was, the destruction. So it just kept going on and on and on. Who knows how long the cycle goes, but, Earth has been through it many times, from all the things from Graham Hancock's work to the stuff that we learned about in Egypt, and how there was so many different civilizations, so many different humanoids living hundreds of thousands of years ago, and they find the proof of it. So yeah, it's important to understand that, the civilization before us has kind of warned us about stuff that may happen, that will happen. And really the biggest thing is to right our consciousness as a group, as a humanity. To each person has a responsibility to get to that place in themselves, to become, heart-based and mind-based when they're all in connection and coherence. And then we can light a torch in somebody else, and then another one, and then another one. But I feel it, man. I feel like it's happening now, because after this trip and even before, like, I feel like people are waking up to what life should be about. It's not about going out there trying to make as much money as we can, trying to pay bills, trying to pay taxes, being stressed all the time, eating shitty food. They're realizing that, okay, there's more to life. And I personally believe my biggest value system is human connection. And when people have a community and connection, and they find love and happiness, doesn't have to be an intimate relationship. You can have connection with friends and family, and so many different people that you have commonalities with. But I think that when we lack that and we disconnect from that, then we start going off in a place that's unnatural for human beings. So to be isolated, or just to be thinking about, things that are on the outside versus going inwards to find what that truth is within you.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be symbiotic between everyone and everything. And I think to take that farther too, we to some degree have divorced ourselves from nature. And, they talk about the confounding of tongues, or getting casted out of the Garden of Eden. We're part of nature. And it's not until we see ourselves as just as important as, every animal is when we see ourselves and every rock and every bird and every bug, and we realize that we're just one other small aspect of that. We may be top of the food chain, but the planet doesn't need us. We need the planet. And yeah, when we can find that in ourselves, in our heart, we can feel that unity. And then also, I think the heart-brain alignment that you talked about is huge too, because then we stop giving up our power, right? The only reason we turn to these corrupt forms of government or leadership or religion or people on these pedestals is because collectively we lack the ability to govern ourselves on a spiritual and mental and metaphysical, all these different levels. As soon as we start taking back that power and becoming sovereign beings again, I think that's where you have that higher harmonic consciousness start to emerge. And when that harmonic becomes more resonant and more powerful than the lower note underneath of it, then actually this now becomes the primary note, and everything that is below that, or that is out of harmony and that is dissonant and that is kind of vibrating in a manner of conflict, starts to fall away and starts to crumble. It's everybody wants the world to change, but then when all the systems of control and power and government and finance, banks are collapsing right now, finance is in shambles right now. When all these systems start to crumble, people are like, well, no, I just want it to all be peace and love. And it's well, if you want it to be peace and love and unity, you got to be ready for the things that are not in alignment with that to totally fall apart, and I think this is a really cool time because education is crumbling. People are really you don't need college. You can go do whatever you want to do. You don't need it. Banks are literally, within the last couple of weeks before we have this call, banks are failing. governments are failing. Like the world is falling apart right now, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm
Yeah.
here for it.
Yeah.
Ride the wave. This is what we came for.
Yeah. If you want change, you can't do change within the same system or the same mind that created that problem, right? So when we start giving up our power, we deserve what we give up, right? We give up our power to government or to whatever it is. When we say no, I have the power within, that's when you say no to the bullshit and then you start creating the world that you want, right? And I was thinking about this the other day, and we'll get back to the pyramids because that's the really what I want to get to. But when we say we follow a certain group or a certain political party, if we're not calling out all the bullshit that's within that, yeah, maybe we align with a lot of the the theories and the things that they do. But if we're not calling that out, and this is on both sides, right? Then
Right.
we're a part of the problem. If you want to create a new system, then you need to say, I'm done with that and I want to create a new, and find people that are looking to that. Because at the end of the day, I think, people, Republicans, Democrats, at the end of the day, they all want happiness. They all want unity. They all want to be happy and doing the things that they love to do. They have different ways to go around it or to accomplish that. But if we all think to ourselves, okay, this person who has a different view than me, they're expressing their divinity, right? And a lot of times we get swept up in ridiculous ideas because they're not coming from us. We're not generating them from the inside. They're being generated for us. So the moment we start taking on other people's ideas, that's when we start getting to problems. And then you go down this slippery slope of the ideas get crazier and crazier and crazier. And if you're on that train, you don't want to get off because everybody on that train who is with you are like, oh, why are you getting off? This is a great ride. But no, what do they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right. Yeah, I do think, on both sides of that, everybody does have good intentions. They think that their way is the right way, and that's great. But if you don't ever check, like you said, if you don't ever check what you're doing and you don't ever second guess it, or at least try to open-mindedly view other points of view, I think to the ones of us that are like doing the work and meditating and really tuning in to that higher frequency, it almost becomes more and more comical, where like I just can't take it seriously anymore.
Yeah.
The whole political sham. It's like you're a sports fan, right? And like, and you were born in this city, and I get it, and you're proud of your city. So you're born in the city a Democrat, or you're born in the city a Republican, and like your parents were born in that city. So you didn't even really second guess or question your political beliefs. You were just told the way things are because your parents and your grandparents were that way. But you're passionate about your team. And like, it doesn't matter if your team is 0-12. You're still going to put on that fucking jersey and you're going to go to the Coliseum and you're going to cheer your team on. And it's like, dude, your team sucks. Like, that's cool. You're proud of it. But like, and it just, to me now, it's so comical when people get so caught up in that. And it's like that it's totally designed to keep people divided and pinned against one another. And that's it. And if I can if you're my family member, let's not even say we're neighbors, let's say we're like little brothers or cousins, and I choose this left team and you choose this right team, and they can get me so angry at you or you so angry at me that we no longer feel love for one another. There's animosity there. There's some type of lower vibrational emotion that we're feeling towards each other because of a fucking game.
Yeah.
Then they've won. And if we can look past all that and realize, we all breathe the same air and we all bleed the same red, then we can dissolve those structures. So
yeah, it was the same thing in ancient Rome, right? The bread and circus with the gladiatorial fights. It's the same thing going on. We're just fighting over sports. We're fighting over politics. We're fighting over the most ridiculous things. That do they define us? Does being a Democrat or a Republican really define who you are as a person? Does it affect your life on a daily basis in everything you do? If it does, then maybe there's a problem there.
Right. Yeah. I think the systematic stripping away of all those things, it's tough. It's tough for people to go into that, but like, get rid of all the masks that we wear. Like, okay,
identities.
Yeah. Like, okay, I'm this is my job. Okay, let's get rid of that. What am I without my career? Or I do music. Okay, for so long I identified as a musician. Like that's my identity. I make music, and I had done that for a while, semi like successfully, and toured and done all that. Okay, let's get rid of that. Let's say I'm not a musician and I can't say that. Okay, what's left? Okay, am I a husband, or am I a father, or am I these things? Which I'm not, but I'm just saying for somebody who is, how do we strip away all of these identifications that we have about ourselves mentally? And I think once we take enough things away, then that which we truly are remains, which, is infinite consciousness, having an experience, that has divided itself so that it can mirror off of itself and bounce back and forth off of other aspects of itself, in order to gain information and knowledge about its true nature. And so, with a lot of things, just like in life, I think you have to go do a bunch of things to figure out what you don't want to do. Like if somebody just tells you like, hey, don't drink 10 shots of tequila, you might listen, but you're not going to really know why you don't want to drink 10 shots of tequila. You go drink 10 shots of tequila a bunch of times and feel horrible, then you totally understand why you don't want to do that. And I think consciousness, like, let's divide itself, consciousness into all of this. And now we've hit this point, and it's all this sine wave that goes up and down, like just like life, you hit this bottom, but then it's going to get better, but then you're going to peak out, and then you're going to hit the bottom again. And that space in between the two is how we identify with emotions and our path and different things. And I think the world right now is like bottoming out on this sine wave where it's like, oh shit, we can't go any lower than that, or we're going to run the whole thing into the ground. Like, we have to turn something around here and make some changes.
Yeah. And it's not a bad thing too. This is just part of the universe. You have to have the yin and the yang, right? It's always going to be that way. So we can either have fun with it and try to build something beautiful, or we can get depressed and sad and all this kind of stuff. But, it's not really helping us. It's not helping our own evolution, and it's not helping, the evolution of the planet if we're kind of looking at it from like a black pill perspective and like there's no hope. I truly believe that we are entering a beautiful age where we're all going to be coming together and realizing, hey, like unity is the thing. That's what we're focused on. How do we bring everybody up?
Yeah, tons of hope. I think that's why we all came here, the people that are kind of front running this one. And like, how exciting is it to ride the ride,
There's never been a better time to be alive, right? With all the things available to us, there's never been a better time to be alive, I think. Yeah. And I want to segue back into the pyramids.
Yeah, to the pyramids. All right. Yeah, we should.
So just to end with Menkaure, the first one we came out. So once all that was done, like that was the first experience inside the pyramids. My mind was blown. That could have been like the entire experience for me, and I would have been super happy, right?
Totally.
So leaving the freaking. So the way that it works is like when you go into these pyramids, like there's a lot of places like tunnels you have to like really duck down, and then some tunnels are really high. It's just really strange, but I think it has to do with sound and harmonics and energy flow and all this kind of stuff. But either way, it's also a metaphor for life. So when you have to bend down, sometimes it's like almost like a humbling experience. When you're raised up and there's high ceilings, you feel more like as a king and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of overtones from that I picked up. Could just be my own imagination, but that's the way we're gonna talk about it. So as we were coming out of Menkaure, like, so we were bending down to come out of the thing. There's the door opening, and I look up, and fucking Orion's belt is right in front of us. Right on top of the pyramid. Specifically, like the middle one was right in front. It was, you couldn't even write a better script. I was like, oh, maybe they planned this like to come out of this time, but no, like how do you even plan something like that? That was magical. And that was like my first holy shit moment. Like all the synchronicities are happening in this one too. Okay, this is gonna be a magical fucking tour. And it was only the first day, I think. It was the second day that we were there.
No, that was day 2. Like we got in, had a little intro thing, and then just dropped into that. Menkaure was good. I remember we walked out and we looked up and we saw Orion's belt, and then we went over. And I remember walking up like directly up to Khufu and just realizing, whoa. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know that I could describe the feeling other than just pure awe And then same thing going in there. Well, we went into the Queen's Chamber first.
Mm-hmm.
And we did another activation prayer in there, which was really cool. And Queen's Chamber is not all rose quartz. It's different. But that was really cool. We spent just a few minutes in there, and we kind of got out of there. We saw like the shafts that went up, and then we went into the King's Chamber, where the sarcophagus is. And that one, that sat me down again. I tried to hang but like everybody started chanting and everybody was like doing some ohms, and I had to sit down, like actually sit down against a wall, and I closed my eyes, and I definitely am. I feel more, I don't see a ton like in here, but I feel everything. But this time, eyes closed, over in the corner over by the sarcophagus, I with my eyes closed, I saw this like big iridescent orb of light pop through the wall and was just like vibing over the sarcophagus. Like it just like geometric patterns, like an orb, but like not even necessarily flower of life patterns, just completely shifting patterns. But whatever the patterns were shifting was like its form of communication. Like this thing didn't need to talk. Like this thing was well beyond. Mm-hmm. It communicated in complex geometrical forms, and I think just by witnessing it, like it told me so much in like maybe 5 seconds of it doing its thing, to the point where here we are, we've been home almost a month now. Been home a few weeks now. I'm still like just unpacking whatever it is that I got in 5 seconds. And I feel like, I don't want to put a time frame on it, but I feel like for months I will continue to unpack whatever the fuck happened there. Like I dissolved, the ground dissolved. I was in this, again, like a space of nothing. My girlfriend saw the top of the pyramid crumble away and blasted off into the stars.
Wow. This is before you even got into the King's Chamber. Or sorry,
this was in the King's Chamber.
Yeah. So in the sarcophagus.
No, that was before I got in the sarcophagus. Yeah, I was just like sitting against the wall trying to process it. And then so that being had come in and that being had left, and I'm just like vibing. And then for some reason, I knew when you got in the sarcophagus, because it kind of pulled me out of it. And then I grabbed Allyssa and I was like, oh, Anand's in there. Like, we should go over there now. But in a trance, man, felt like I floated over there. I don't remember walking. I felt like just everything was, I cannot even explain it. It's something you would have to experience on your own. And then we went over there and kind of you were laying in there doing your jam, chanting up and sending some energy in there. But yeah, what was that like for you? Because we just kind of witnessed it.
Yeah, so maybe I'll kind of back up and just give a little kind of background. So once we got it, so I was one of the last people to get it. So from the Queen's Chamber, which was a beautiful experience, we were walking. I think it was one of the last ones to leave the Queen's Chamber. So it was like the last one to get into the King's Chamber. So it's a really small room. I couldn't even imagine what the dimensions are. It was so surreal. It felt like it was, huge, but I think it was probably like maybe 20 feet by maybe 15. I don't know. Do you think that's probably something of that?
Maybe
nature?
35 by 15 or so.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, even with that, right? So we had 35 people. People were just like lined up along the walls. And I think Robert was like getting in right before me. So I see him make a beeline right to the sarcophagus, because there's people like standing around the sarcophagus. Nobody had like the courage to jump in. Like they didn't know what the etiquette was. Like you ever see like somebody hop a turnstile in a subway? Like Robert like ran up there, just to jumped in, laid down. So I think that was giving everybody permission to kind of like do their thing and get in. So I didn't even sit down. I just stood around. I took my shoes off because I wanted to really feel the ground and the stone in there. And I was just, it was so hot, first of all, that day. It was like we were in like winter over there, which is nice and mild, but it's inside the pyramid because it's so small. it was just like probably like 90 something, 95 degrees in there. So I was like sweating a ton in there. All right. So then once, I waited my turn, like there was like maybe 5, 6 people that went in before me. But during that time, basically there was maybe 10 people around the chamber and just like praying for the person that was in there, doing some, healing, whichever they felt was appropriate for that person. And I finally had the opportunity to go in. But prior to that, I was doing a lot of breath work because I know breath is going to activate me and get me to like a little bit higher state. So I was doing my 3-part breath, breathing into the stomach, to the chest, holding it up to the third eye, and then releasing, and just keep going like that. So I was really in an elevated state as well by the time I was ready to jump in. So I jumped in, I laid down, and we were told to do some like humming or oming, right? So I was like, or om, and you could just hear it. It's like, ooh, ooh, ooh. So it felt like I was just like, my ohms were just being like hitting me constantly, like waves over and over and over. And it was so beautiful. Inside the chamber alone, I could hear my own sound. But then was really nice is there was some really beautiful goddesses around me that one of them is like she channels the angels singing, and she was singing. It felt like an Atlantean priestess, and she was like at my feet basically. And then there was other two women that were on the sides of me, and they were holding hands, and they were doing another prayer activation. And then you guys were around me. So that I just felt like I was so loved in that moment. And I was thinking to myself, like parts of like consciousness was coming back to me, and like, this is such a beautiful experience. All these strangers are like sending me so much love. But at that time also I was doing the breath work, and my Kundalini started like really awakening. So I started feeling, during the breath work and everything like that, laying down inside the chamber, I felt the Kundalini energy coming up from my perineum all the way up. And then my spine just kept coming up. So I was like almost having like orgasmic convulsions in there. And I didn't even know how long I was in there for, maybe like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It seemed like an eternity. It was insane. And at some point I felt my consciousness blasting out of my third eye. I left up through the pyramid, and I opened my eyes metaphorically, and I'm in this open air palace. It feels like Shambhala or something. I'm in this, is like on top of a mountain. It was so beautiful. Like I could see the sky. I could see like doves flying by, eagles. And then there was same thing. There was a bunch of beautiful beings around me. There was Hindu gods and Egyptian gods and Atlantean gods showering me with gold and flowers. And there was this beautiful like waterfall coming on me, like really, just like beautiful like raindrops. And it was so amazing. There was like Black Panthers and some of my spirit animals. And I couldn't even I just felt so much love. And what was coming to me is like, they were doing these healing activations for me. And the conscious mind was coming to me saying that all the things that we hold on to and we feel like they're shackles in our life, whether it's feeling unworthy or not feeling loved or whatever growing up, those were shackles that we started creating a story for. But really, they're not really shackles. They're as light as a feather. And if we can just recognize that they are a feather, and at any moment you just take that feather and you take it off your heart, at that point, then you start realizing that all the problems that we created in our mind, it's so simple to change the timeline just by creating, an affirmation for it and allowing it to, it served us to a certain point. It helped us get to where we got to, because that pain causes the growth. But once you remove that, now it's time to create a new story. So for me at that moment, I was like, okay, I have to create a new story in my life. And now is the time I get to choose, not, feel like I was given something, or, whatever story that I created in the past is not with me anymore. So now where do I want to go? It's like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. And it kind of reminds me of, there's a story of in the afterlife, when the Egyptians, they die, there's I think it's Anubis takes them to Amat, which is the god of death, and they weigh your heart, and they weigh it against a feather. And if your heart is more than the feather, it means that you weren't a pious, a spiritual, loving person, where every thought you resonated was love. If it's the same, then your heart is as light as a feather, and that's when you get to go on to the afterlife, or what I think is like the next stage of this stimulation or simulation. It's just the gamification of life. Is like, okay, you get to go to the next level, because everybody defines death and life and afterlife and all that kind of stuff as different things. But I think that kind of unlocks it for you. So yeah, the goal for me now is just to be as light as possible, not carry too much like heaviness on my body and in my mind, in my heart. And that's really like the key to, to eternity right there.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And that's also really cool to experience all that, that quickly and in that place, in that way. It reminds me of, because you got these people and they're just very like intellectual or scientists or different government people. And they are so, and they're very serious about their work. And I love seeing people in their flow state. I love seeing people in their zone and people that are passionate about what they're doing, because that's amazing. But also, like, look at these yogis and these gurus. Like, they just go around laughing and they're smiling. Everything is a gigantic joke. And it's all fucking hilarious because they actually are the ones that get it. And I think the less seriously, I mean, yeah, be passionate. We got to do what we're doing and do the work. But the less seriously we take ourselves at the same time, it's that lightheartedness where it's like you're going through the world. We may be creeping on 40 or 40, but still have like the heart of a child as you do it. How is that a possibility? And then the people that aren't there, think you're crazy, or like, oh, you're irresponsible or this and that. It's like, no, I'm having way more fun than they are. That's all.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, everybody gets to choose how they want to go about it, right? If the one person is having fun throughout it, who's really like the winner at the end, right? Even if you like hallucinated the whole thing, like the experience was the laughter and the play and the games, right? And enjoying yourself versus somebody that was serious all the time, very responsible, but at the end of their life, were they happy for it? Were they a better person for it? There's no judgment anywhere, right? Like if that's their life journey, that's their life journey. But I feel like, especially in the last, I would say 5-6 years, it's just like, yeah, coming to a place where you're living from a childlike exuberance, it makes all the difference. And then everything else kind of fades away. Like, yeah, we'll run into issues every single day, challenges we have to overcome, whatever it is. But yeah, just look at it from a child's perspective. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to like, finish you, you're always going to breathe and move on to the next thing. And everything's going to be okay. Breakups, whatever it is, business failures, it's going to happen in life. Right.
Yeah. And whatever, it's fine. Even if it is the end of the world. Great. That sounds really exciting. Sounds like an adventure.
Yeah. Let's enjoy it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, dude. So was there anything? Okay. You want to talk about your experience inside the sarcophagus?
Yeah. So we got up. I'm still trying to process whatever, light being is that blasted through the wall and just like spit codes at me. My legs are gone at this point, and Robert's like, get over there. It's like, hey, we're running out, like get in there and lay down. And then I remember I laid down and like my head was just super tingling and my heart is blasted wide open. Like I can feel when I get into meditations, I can feel my heart field, I guess. And I can feel when it's like, 5-10 feet outside of my body. I can feel when it's a half mile out too. Like sometimes I'll get in these meditations and I take my heart field and I try to expand it to encompass like the state of Colorado. And then I'll go for the United States. Then I'll go for the planet. Then I'll reach out to the sun and I'll try to like get and I'll just like slowly expand out into whatever I can perceive in regards to, our solar system, the Milky Way, Andromeda next door, and just go all the way out and then all the way back in. My heart was just like, when I got in there, almost too much to handle, like this overwhelming amount of love where just like everything is awesome and everything is perfect and everything is good. No matter what the mind says, I'm just like, wow, it's all perfect. It's all perfectly balanced. It's nothing that my mind is really maybe ever going to conceptualize because it's balanced in opposites. And as soon as my mind wants to choose a side and think one thing is good and the other is wrong, then I'm not seeing the whole picture. So as I'm laying in there, I'm already, deep in it. And then I kind of relax and same thing, all the chanting and all the sound that was coming back in on me. My head just started tingling. And then I remember, we're supposed to make like an Om. So I started like, oh, but like, I mean, you know me, like I'm loud as fuck. I have no noise control. I have no volume control. Like I talk, I'm so loud.
You can hear you on the other side of the room everywhere.
Dude, yeah, like if I'm around, you're gonna know it. And I'm trying to be quiet, you know. So I'm like doing my ohms and I can feel the walls just
Yeah, like jelly.
and Robert had to come over. I remember I'm like in it and I'm like, well, this is cool. I'm like, I wonder if I could like do this loud enough to where I could lift off, is what I'm thinking in my mind. And Robert had to come over and be like, dude, you're like, this is a little too much right now. So I got shushed in the sarcophagus. And and then I can't, and then, you know, I was only in there for maybe a minute or two because we were trying to hurry out.
Yeah.
And it just took everything that I had experienced for the first hour and 45 minutes and amplified it. I remember like I got out of there and feeling just like so full, overwhelmingly full. Like I can't even explain it. My legs felt like jello. And I mean, this is, you know, we ate dinner, no alcohol, no drugs. Like we had been fasting, you know, this is completely organic and natural, whatever I felt in there. But I felt like I took all the drugs, which I can't even explain. I've never had I've had, you know, some like psychotropic breath work and stuff like that, and some pretty deep meditations, but I've never had a room be able to do that. And it's clear, like the pyramids are clearly just pulling energy up from a nodal point on the grid right through the king's chambers. So whatever you bring there is definitely amplified. And then I remember I was just like, I was so out of it. I think we all were just so like, what is even going on? You know, we walked out and looked at Orion's belt. I like stumbled down the steps. I left my jacket in there. I didn't know what was going on. And then we all kind of just like sat there in a hug. I think you and then that other lady that was like right there were just like bawling.
Yeah.
I was like, this is just amazing. Like, this is so cool.
And it was like perfect weather. It almost it felt like I didn't even have a body at that point. I remember coming out of the chamber and you guys were the first ones that greeted me. Like I was like coming out, I was on jelly legs and you guys like held me up and you guys gave me a hug and I'm like, I love you guys. It was very powerful.
Yeah, that was wild. It was like good wild though, you know.
Yeah.
Out of all the things you could feel, it's like, you know, right up near the top.
It was beautiful. So, okay, so that's like 2 out of 3, right? That's
so,
the first
and
2
then
pyramids.
they tried to. So then we were gonna have a snack, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm so lifted right now. I don't know if I want to eat food and bring this down. So we kept our food on the side, and then the last pyramid, don't remember a thing.
Wow.
Remember walking up to it. Remember walking back to the bus.
Amazing.
Couldn't tell you what it looked like.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell, like, and this is like I was sober. I mean, I didn't have anything, and couldn't tell you what the room like. Tell me. I have no clue.
I'll fill you in. It was actually wild, and you were a very integral part of it. So, okay, so we go into the Khufu chamber, and there's it's basically what I was talking to somebody else who visited recently. They said that it's basically it's like the Mother Earth like energy in there. So it's like 432 hertz. When you sing in there, basically you're getting this beautiful feminine like.
Oh, I do remember now.
Yeah, so there is a sarcophagus in there, and it's like kind of like held up, you know, with different equipment they have now. But apparently, the Ark of the Covenant was housed in this chamber, inside this sarcophagus, and it was pretty amazing. So yeah, when we all got in there, at this point, I think Robert went to the other group, so like it was just kind of like us and like a couple of different, you know, like faculty members and stuff like that. But we were kind of on our own. We were just like all exploring. And then somehow just generically it happened where all of the, so we all start going in the chamber and everyone's trying to figure out, okay, who's going to go inside in the sarcophagus. And I just had this like vision. I'm like, maybe it's just like good to have all the lovely females that were singing for everybody going, and I didn't even have to say anything. It just happened where they all sat
Yeah.
in there, and they were like four of them sitting inside. And then a lot of there was other females sitting around, but then there was males kind of like surrounding that other perimeter. And it just so happened where we all got into like this group choir, like singing, it was beautiful, where the ladies were doing their shamanic singing and angelic singing, and the guys, you were on the other side of me, and we were kind
Yeah,
of
I
like
was on
holding
one
down.
end.
Yeah, and we were just doing a real like, just like not being too loud, but just holding the space for the ladies. And we literally sang for, I would say, like an hour and a half, and we were just experiencing the beauty. And what I kind of felt was, obviously we were the only ones inside the Great Pyramids on that particular night. It was a full moon. It's a very special night. I think there was also a solar flare that was going off that particular day as well, and it was like way
Yep.
beyond anything that they predicted. But I felt like there was a lot of healing for the women in the group, um, individually, but I also felt like there was a collective healing for the divine goddess in humanity. And
Yeah.
also, my girlfriend Kate was having a breathwork event at that time as well. And I reached out to her. I'm like, "Did you guys feel anything different like during that?" Because I kind of felt like this connection with all of humanity and females all around the world, like they were receiving this, because it is such a powerful place that we were in. And she said, yeah, the sound bath was incredible, and everybody was like really getting into it. There was a lot of tears, a lot of laughter, a lot of joy, all this kind of stuff, like range of emotions. And yeah, just being in there for an hour and a half, it was pretty wild to be able to do that, and to serve, and to kind of hold space for the group. And I know that you said you were like out of it, and you went on a meditation, and you said that you didn't. Yeah, why don't you talk
I
about that?
remember now. So now that you recall that, like if I tried to dig that up in my mind, would just drew a blank. So I do not remember walking into there. I remember going around the corner to the right, and I saw that the sarcophagus, and instinctively, I think in the whole kind of you know, what we were trying to get at for the trip is to really uplift and balance the divine feminine, not just for the ladies in the group, but for the whole world. Just with the sense of, that has kind of femininity and nature and Mother Earth has kind of been put in this type of like masculinity is above and femininity is below, and kind of trying to bring that back up to where the two are equal parts of a whole, and raising the divine feminine. But I remember going around the corner there. We saw the room, we saw the sarcophagus, and I remember walking up, sitting in there. I dipped my legs into the sarcophagus, and the girls sat down, and then there was like people sitting around me too. And I remember putting up my hands and starting to like just kind of and hit it with heart space. And I remember seeing you on the other side of standing up on the other side of the chamber doing the exact same thing. But then like you could have told me that 5 minutes passed, and you could have told me that 8 hours passed, and I would have believed whatever you had said.
Here's why I know that we were in there for a lot longer, is because we had 2 hours in there, right? And I think there was only like one chamber or two chambers that we went into. And by the time we got in there, that was like the first thing we kind of did. We all got in there. So we were like shutting the place down. Like we were being told, hey, you guys got to finish up. You got to finish up. So 2 hours, and it wasn't that long to get to the actual chamber. It didn't take that long from what I remember. I mean, it's like everything is kind of a blur. So, maybe I'm getting things mixed up, but it's such a powerful place. And dude, like 2 hours in each one of these is not enough. So we absolutely have to do this again. We got to run it back.
There's 2024, there's that solar eclipse in April, I believe. And I think that'd be a pretty cool time to do it.
Yeah.
Because the solar eclipse that happens right over America, and Egypt is the other side of the world. So I think that'd be a good time to pull through, some more energy, especially to ground in some of the light codes that are coming from the sun now, but yes, absolutely. Again.
Yeah, for sure. We'll reach out to our people, and yeah, we'll probably look for like a select group of very, very elevated people to come with us to do some prayers and to activations and stuff like that. So if anyone listening is interested, probably could reach out and submit some kind of application we could create, right?
Yeah, we should kind of put out some feels, and then I do think 12 or 13 is a pretty good group size to roll with, just given how that all works.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Yeah, that was such a powerful experience. I mean, we could go all day talking about this trip and everything, but I do wanted to talk about, because I know you mentioned, I just wanted to get your permission to talk about it. There was an experience on the last night that you had. I actually already left out of Cairo, and you had one more day there, and there was a very special activation that was happening with some of the members that were there.
Yeah, so I mean, the names will mean nothing to anybody but you, but Marnix and Michaela and a couple of the Marnix is a heavy lifter on the spiritual side of things, and Michaela is as well. And Sri and they had all set up, decided that they're going to go back into the King's Chamber and do some more grid work and try to activate Saqqara. And so they had asked us to initially go to Saqqara and hold space. And
Saqqara is a site a little bit outside of Egypt, by the way, and
right.
It's a very, very special temple complex. There's massive sarcophaguses there.
And we were not able to go there, so we all kind of just meditated and tuned in. They all went into the King's Chamber, and to be honest, in a complete effort of a timeline shift in regards to there's a lot of souls that have chosen to ascend and kind of are like way showers in this like spiritual thing and doing the work and all that. There's some souls that have chosen to remain in 3D Earth, but as we go through this mitosis, I think there's a lot of like souls that are kind of in the middle and they don't really know. And if they were just kind of given a little push, they would probably elect to bump up timelines and go with that route. So the intentionality with that group was to go in there and do some grid work, bring Saqqara back online, bring more of these ancient grids back online, like the Lemurian grids, particularly. And so we were holding space for that. And
so you guys were staying at the hotel, right?
Yeah, we all, so Pete, Roxy, the Aussies, Allyssa and I, and then John Olof and I think it was Victor, we're all kind of did the whole meditation thing. And again, like I just, I'm a feeler, so I can go in, I can open heart, expand it, and just like harmonize everything in that space. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just doing what I know to do, holding space for them, is like sending good vibes. And then like Roxy is very, very, very in tune. Like very, very in tune. And she was seeing some images. Allyssa, my girlfriend, saw Saqqara, just a beam of light come out of the pyramid at some point. And it's like, okay, well, like, yeah, I guess it worked. And then Roxy kind of felt the same thing. And she had seen like, some octopus entity that was like kind of trying to like cloud the situation. And then some giant came into the room, like a light being was just like, nah, like we're not going to have that right now. And kind of cleared that mess up. But she's very in tune. She's you should have her on your podcast.
Totally. We're talking about getting them on. Yeah.
But yeah, so just kind of did that, and we all held space for them, and we bumped back into Michaela at the airport, getting onto the plane, and she was still just like, whoa, what, but then we all had a Zoom call about it like a week after we got back, and everybody kind of told what they experienced and saw, and really cool to be a part of it. That stuff's fun. I think not just in Egypt, but maybe at some of these other temples, and going down to Machu Picchu and doing some work. We've already spent a lot of time going to the pyramids like Teotihuacan and Chichen Itza and Tulum and Coba, and doing these things in Mexico because I felt called to visit those sites and bring codes there and also receive codes back out. But yeah, that was a really cool experience, and I think anywhere the grid work can be done, it's helpful right now.
Yeah, just everything that you are, every emotion that you carry, you're carrying it forward with you, right? So if you're in an elevated state, if you're in a loving state, you're leaving an energetic resonance. And this has been monitored. You could do Kirlian photography and see what the energy field grid is of yourself. So it makes sense that anywhere you go, you're carrying that field. So, it's really important to monitor what our emotions are, what our thinking is at the time. And, if you're walking past somebody and judging them, or if you're walking past them and sending them some, negative message, there is some kind of energetic exchange that's going on. And it's really important for us to make sure that we're vibing in a place of love as much as possible. I know it's not always easy, but because we're doing that and we're going to these sites with an intention, it does make a difference. And it's so beautiful that, we got to go with a group that is so conscious enough. Not only do they want to improve their lives, they want to make the people in their lives, the people in their lives better, but also for the planet. We really care. Everybody that was on this trip really cares about the direction and the future of humanity, and want to see this planet, evolve into something that's more of a 5D consciousness, where there is so much more love and unity and togetherness, because that's what we're capable of. We already saw the dark stuff, and we already know what we don't want. So let's go out and now create, the positive part of it.
Yeah, totally. It's good.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure talking to you. It's really awesome to catch up. I mean, this is just 2 days of the trip we talked about, but there's so much more we can kind of get into. But what are your last thoughts on why do you think these sites were built in Egypt?
I mean, if from all the information that I have been able to gather and dig back on and try to find, it seems to me like there was a civilization called Lemuria, which was, there's another triangle over, like from the edge of Peru to Easter Island, like up to Hawaii and back down. This was this like Lemurian civilization, almost predating Atlantean civilization. If you read about the rumors of Atlantis, and then you had Atlantis over on the other side in the Atlantic Ocean. And you read about this entity, Thoth, who was renamed Thoth by the Greeks, but his real name was Jehudi, and he was like, non-human, some type of interdimensional or some type of other being. And you hear about, like, if you read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, it talks about the fall of like how Atlantis fell, and Thoth came over and built the Great Pyramid. And from all the knowledge I've been able to gather, it appears that Atlantis crumbled in the last deluge and went into the ocean. And some of the high priests and priestesses and some of the entities there that were kind of running that brought that technology and brought that knowledge over to the Nile River, just because it's a perfect place to create a civilization. And I think, that's where we get the pyramids, and that's where we get the entire, all of those sites that you see up and down the Nile, the more and more ancient ones, especially like the Osirian, that's clearly much, much older than some of these other sites. So like this pre-dynastic Egypt thing, I think they were trying to preserve, those higher levels of connection and the ability to do that, and the ability to come in and out of this world, and go, to wherever else they were going to. So I think it was like a preservation of the downfall of Atlantis is what it seems like to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful summary. And I think that, all the stuff that we're seeing and all the knowledge bases, they're all kind of converging into this central theory, which I very much subscribe to. And, in conclusion, like how has your life changed, and what new perspectives have you had since coming back from this trip that you're going to carry forward?
First of all, just everything that I was trying to make happen like so hard before this trip is just like lining up. In bigger ways than I could have hoped for this trip. Second, internally, I feel lighter. I feel like way more at peace. My meditations are amazing. I've been waking up. I came home, slept like 15-hour nights for like 2 or 3 days. Like I couldn't even process what had just happened. I feel so content, so happy. And my, I've definitely shifted more into, I want to go experience some of these other sites around the world that are, maybe not quite on the Giza level, but on places on the ley lines. And I do feel like there's been a bit of a timeline shift, for me, quite a bit of a timeline shift, I guess I could say. I feel more whole entirely, like going through my day, interacting with people, everything. I am far more conscious of the energies and how they're affecting me. I feel like time is speeding up. And as we get closer and closer and into 5D, the manifestations will happen instantaneously, where I feel more like setting boundaries and filters on what I'm going to allow into my consciousness. Like I was watching a movie last night, and it was just like it was everything everywhere all at once, and there's just like portals and killing and this great evil and gore and blood. And dude, I couldn't fucking handle it. Like I can't even have that being part of my reality anymore. I'm just not jamming with it anymore. And so I feel like this trip and the sites were definitely like downloads and things there. But I feel like whatever happened that night in the pyramids, I think you feel the same way too. Whatever went on there is what kind of just like catalyzed this massive upward spiral right now that I'm honestly like, we probably have to touch base, in 3 months or 6 months to figure it out, because I'm still totally unpacking it all.
Yeah, it's like a psychedelic experience. And you talked about the sacred geometry that you saw, and it was just like going crazy, right? So a couple of things, like when people do psychedelics, when people do ayahuasca, DMT, when they're blasting off, the first thing that they're cracking through is they're going through almost like a wormhole with tons of sacred geometry, right? So there has to be something involved in the spirit and the pineal gland that relates to mathematics and geometry as a language of God or a higher consciousness. Secondly, we do a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza work, and when they do brain scans of people in high meditation, in gamma state and delta state and all this kind of stuff, they're freezing it and they're seeing, oh shit, this is like sacred geometry. The brain is creating these electrical patterns of sacred geometry. So there's got to be something to it. And, one of the things that really I got like kind of turned back on in my life is the loving math. And I stopped loving it for a very long time. And now, me and my girlfriend are starting to draw sacred geometry and, do different things. And it's really cool. And apparently it's going to activate a lot of bigger perspective thinking in life. So I'm looking forward to that journey. And, speaking of math, like I can't have you on without asking you about a little bit of it, because you're a big finance guy as well. And you're really into Bitcoin and mining. So what is your take on like kind of the economy and where we're kind of heading and stuff to look out for people protecting their wealth and stuff?
Yeah. I don't think I know. I'm sure you know about the SVB collapse.
Silicon Valley Bank.
Credit Suisse just was acquired. Another Credit Suisse is another bank acquired by one of their fiercest competitors. I'm sure that was not fun. Signature Bank, New York, collapsed. I had thought PNC was looking rough, and Deutsche Bank is still looking rough. So we're looking at at this point, like a global banking issue. And it's all because of fractional reserve banking, but it does. So the Fed has now decided the Fed had tightened monetary policy to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. So they were pulling money off the table while they were raising the rates, obviously with good intentions. The intention there is to raise interest rates and curb inflation, because during COVID, they printed a couple $1 trillion and essentially gave that money away. So there's no other outcome than inflation. These types of issues, it's not like, this isn't really my opinion. This is sort of just like a fact of economic, like if you know how the system works. So anyway, as these banks all failed, like literally collapsing, like bank runs happening left and right. This is the most intense we've seen it since '08, I guess, really, and maybe a little more intense to some degree. But the Fed just decided to create some new programs for the banks, print another couple $1 trillion. I love the $1 trillion coin idea. They're talking about minting this gold coin.
I heard about this.
You know, that like it might be worth $250,000 or so. Like, I mean, this much gold, like, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 ounces of gold, like at most, or unless they're going to build this like massive dope coin, in which case still only worth a few mil, like at most by weight. But they're talking about minting this coin, stamping it, and saying that it's because they said so worth $1 trillion. They're going to hold it in the vault, and they're going to create more like false value just because they decided they can, because they think that's going to solve things. So on one side, I think it's a little less alarming that they printed this $2 trillion and they're making sure like deposits over 250,000 are insured. They took care of SVB. They're taking care of these banks. So good and bad, like we're probably not going to see a total bank collapse and total failure of all the banks, which is nice. Because that would have been like bad, like really bad. Like everybody wakes up in America one day and, you know, every bank except for like Chase and Wells Fargo are just collapsed. You can't get your money out. Sorry, it's gone. We don't have it type situation. That's bad. That would have been really bad. But what printing another $2 trillion is going to do to inflation is the dollar is just going to continue to inflate. So the dollar will lose more and more value as time goes forward. There was just a conversation within the last week or two where the Saudis are now talking about selling oil in other denominations than USD, which would strongly devalue our dollar. Because right now we've got contracts with all these Saudis and through OPEC and these, you know, these big oil juggernauts to where they will trade oil and sell oil in US dollars. So it puffs up the value of the US dollar, if you will. So I think we're going to continue to see.
They're opening up major refineries in China, I believe. They just announced.
Yeah. So they're open to dealing in yen, which, I mean, you know, with some of the decisions America has made and the way we've treated them and everything, like it's, I mean, I know it's cliche to say business is business, but at some level, it's just very high level, like global, like geopolitical business is what it is. And I get it. I think on the good side, you know, it's not just the US dollar that's inflating to all of eternity. It's like when we were in Egypt, the Egyptian pound had lost 50% of its value to the US dollar in 3 months. So other governments, other denominations of currency are inflating as well. So, you know, the dollar is still currently right now strong. But also, you know, it's not a fun idea to be either losing money in the stock market or seeing like 7 to 10% gains per year when your dollar's inflating at an effective rate of 15 to 25%. And this starts from, there's a book, this guy like went over like 50 different governments and economies that just totally blew up and collapsed, like Argentina, like you can even talk about ancient Rome once they diluted the silver, like basically the currency became worthless. And it all starts with the monetization of debt. As soon as you monetize debt, then you start to slowly inflate, and then eventually it turns into a hyperinflationary state, because those systems always end in the same way. So, you know, I don't think it's anything to like freak out about immediately. And even if you do freak out, you can't do anything to change it. But as far as like what steps am I taking, I don't know necessarily the exact right move. But I do, you know, I'm a big advocate for Bitcoin. It's deflationary. It's going to keep going up in value now. You know, this is being recorded end of March 2023. I think now for the next year probably is a really good time to accumulate and buy Bitcoin. And I think that by the end of 2024 into the beginning of 2025, we'll definitely see $100,000 Bitcoin or more. So it's a good way to you know, hold that asset, which is not just US dollars, but your Bitcoin is good globally. You can have it on your private wallet. I think another lesson to be learned here is sovereignty, right? We talked about that. If I go put all my money in a bank and trust them, and then they make bad decisions, I'm screwed at the end of the day. Whereas I can have a cold wallet. I would highly advise only keeping Bitcoin, Ethereum on a cold wallet at your house. Don't go put it on an exchange. Don't keep it on Coinbase. Don't keep it at FTX.
Definitely not FTX. Or Coinbase just got sued by the SEC, which is
yeah, FTX collapsed as well. Saw that coming from a mile away.
Yep.
But you keep it on your cold wallet. I also, people are buying gold and silver, which I don't think is necessarily some grand investment strategy right now. But if the dollar inflates to, another 15, 20% per year for the next 5 years, the value of silver and gold will hold. It will be worth more and more dollars while your dollars are able to purchase less things. So I think, I wouldn't go put the farm in silver and gold, but I definitely own, not invest in stocks, but actually have the precious, coins, ounces at home. I think that's a good idea. I still think real estate's a great idea. If you own a home or anything, that's wonderful. And I just think it's scary to say and it feels weird to say, but a diversification away from the US dollar. And I'm not the only one saying this. If you look at what Robert Kiyosaki is saying right now, he's saying what I'm saying, but with way more dramatic effect. This is coming and it's going to be really bad type situation. And, the bottom's going to fall out of the market and yada, yada, yada. They can bail out the banks, but if they keep pushing inflation, then that's great that the banks are fine, but all that weight falls on the American people. So yeah, I think that's I know that's what's going on macro. I do think that getting out of the dollar to some degree is good. I don't think there's cause for panic and go pull all your money out of the bank, but I did go grab some cash out. We'll probably maintain at least a month or two worth of cash just sitting at the house, just in case something does happen. I'm sure there'll be a fix. But it would really be a pain in the ass to try to go to SVB to get a couple $1 million out. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we don't have your money. Sorry. And we're not gonna, so I think having a little bit of cash on hand, a little bit of silver, a little gold on hand is a good idea. And then I do think, heavy accumulation of Bitcoin and Ethereum right now is a really, really good idea.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Not financial advice, obviously, but he's making a lot of sense, everybody. So
zero financial advice.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's always a pleasure. I had such an amazing time with you, 12 days. And just in case anyone hasn't listened to our previous podcast, please check that out. I met Brant at a Joe Dispenza event back in January of 2022, and he's one of my closest friends and brothers. So it's really amazing how quickly you can develop friendships with people when you all have the same alignment and values in life.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, and this was fun always. And you guys will have to get out to Colorado and see what it's like out here sometime.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much. Love you, Brad.
Thank you. Love you.